do the imaginary number. First here, throughout the history of mathematics, new numbers have been created to extend our study of number system. Now, consider the square root of a negative number. This equation has no real solution, right? You know that. If you remember in the discriminant, b squared 4ac, so all of that in the formula is under square root, right? So if you remember, example, let's say we have 36 minus 120. So all of that under the square root in the formula, quadratic formula. So the answer is equal negative 48. So negative 48, I told you that no real solution. Why no real solution? Because I can't have a negative under the square root. So now, starting from now, I will not say no real solution. There will be a solution, but it will not be real. It will call it imaginary solution. If you read here, this equation has no real solution because the square of any number will never be negative. To solve this equation, the imaginary number I, if you check here, the imaginary number, let me change it. So imaginary number I was invented. So let's say to expand our study, because we don't need to write no real solution if I have a negative number, no. So we created something, or we invent something called I. This I represent imaginary number. So I means imaginary number. So now what's the imaginary number this? So let's see what's the imaginary. Let's see the definition of it. So what's the definition of I, the imaginary number? Now, just an example. Let's go back to this example here. X squared minus 1. So now we know that x squared equal minus 1. Now, let's use the square root for both sides. So square root of square root of negative 1. So this cancels out. So x is equal what? Square root of, sorry, square root of negative 1. Now, if you see here, I can't have this answer. So, because x has no real solution, so I will change x, or I will change this variables, and I will write I equal square root of negative 1, because this one cannot happen. This is no real solution. So I will change x and I write it I represent the imaginary number. So now I is equal square root of negative 1. Now, the square root of negative 1, I need to remove the square root. How can I remove the square root? So I know now I is equal what? Square root of 1. Same this, right? So to remove the square root, I have to square root for both sides. So square root for I, and square root for square. Sorry, I have to square both sides. Then to square both sides, it will be I to the power of 2, and square root of negative 1 to the power also 2. So now this 2 will cancel the square root, so it's remain I squared is equal negative 1. So just to summarize, I is equal square root of negative 1, and I squared is equal negative 1. So this is the imaginary number that you need to remember, that we have a value of I, and we have the value of I squared. What's the value of the I? It's square root of negative 1. Okay? What's the value of square root of I? It's equal negative 1. So these are two values that you need to make sure that you understand. How we can write this? We can write it like this. 2i. What's 2i means? 2i means negative 1, negative square root of 1 times 2. What's this represent? This represent negative 5 times negative square root of 1. What's this represent? Same thing. It's represent negative square root of negative 1 over 3. This one, what's this represent? The same thing, negative 1 over 3 times square root of negative 1. So all of these represent the square root of negative 1. How about this one here? This one is very important. So negative square root of 1 times negative times square root of 2. If you check these two out, so you know the formula a b square, we can split them a b. So we can, let's put them back. So it will be negative 1 times 2. So it will be now negative 1 times 2 is equal negative 2 square root. So I can rewrite this one in term of I square root of 2. We do the same thing here, and let's take some examples now. Look to this one. Find the square root of imaginary number. Now let's keep this in your mind. I is equal square root of negative 1, and I squared is equal square root of 1. Now just keep them in your mind. Now let's start simplify this. Do we have a square root of 5? No, we don't have a square root of 5. Now split, first always split your square root into square root of negative 1 times square root of 5. Now, maybe some of you will ask me, teacher, why you did this? I will tell you why. Because always when you have a negative under the square root, this one means negative 1 times 5. Negative 1 times 5. So, negative 1 times 5 under the square root, we can split this one to square root of negative 1 times square root of 5. So that's what I did here, right? So now square root of 1 times square root of 5. Now, if you check here, I told you square root of 1 is equal what? Is equal y. Now replace square root of negative 1 and write what? Write I square root of 5. You can write it like this, or you can write it square root of 5 times I. This one and this one are same. It doesn't matter. Now, let's solve this. First, let's split the square root. So we have square root of negative 1 and square root of 36. Now, what's the square root of 36? Square root of 36 is what? Is 6. Now, what's square root of negative 1 represent? Is represent what? I. So now we replace this one with I. So now the final answer is I 6, or you can write 6I. This one or this one. Both of them are correct. Now let's do this. First, what's the square root? First split the square root. So square root of 1 times square root of 50. What's the square root of 50? I don't have a square root of 50. So now let's find the factors of 50. So we have 2 and 25. Do we have a square root for 25? Yes, I have, which is 5. So now it will be 5 square root of 2. This is the answer, right? So now this bracket will be 5 square root, or this root will be 5 square root of 2. And and square root of negative 1 is equal what? Is equal I. So now your final answer will be I 5 square root of 2, or you can write 5 square root of 2 I. This one or this one, both of them are same. But always try to use this one, which is always try to write I before the number if you have a square root. Now, this one, split the square root. So it will be negative 1 times square root of 16 plus. Here, split the square root. Negative 1 times, okay, square root of 49. Now, we know that this part is equal what? Is equal I. This part, what's the square root of 16? It's 4. So 4I plus. This part is equal what? Is equal I. This part, what's the square root of 49? Is equal 7. Now, the final answer will be I4 plus I7. Okay? So you can write it like this, or you can write the I after the number 4I plus 7I. So this one is similar to this one. I hope you understand now the imaginary number. It's easy, but you need just to practice. Just to practice and then find the square root of the imaginary number. Okay. So first multiply the number by itself. So 2 times 2, which is equal 4. So 4, so it will be now square root of negative 1 times square root of 4. So just add them together. So it will be negative square root of 4. Okay. Same thing happens here. So this one, it will be now negative 1. And 3 is, what's the two number that give me 3? It's, sorry, what's the two number that you multiply them, you get 3, which is 9. Okay. So 9, 3 times 3. So it will be square root of 9. So it will be negative 9 under the square root. Okay. So I hope you understand this. Now let's go to the last part of solving a quadratic equation by taking the square root. So now, just remember that when you have a negative r, so this r will be under the square root and you replace the negative with I. Okay, so if we have negative, example, if you have negative square root of 6, so it will be I square root of 6. Now, if you need to simplify this one, so negative 12 for both sides, negative 12 for both sides, then you take the square root. So the negative, just replace it with I. Okay, so now it will be I square root of 12. Square root of 12 we don't have. So what are the factors of 12? We have 4 and 3. Square root of 4 and square root of 3. So this one can be written as 2. So this is the final answer. Let's do this one. So negative 12 minus 12 for both sides, 11, sorry, negative 11, negative 11 for both sides. So it will be 4x squared. These, they are cancelled. So 6 minus 11, which is equal negative 5. Now divide by 4, divide by 4. So cancel these two out. So x squared is equal negative 5 over 4. Now use the square root for both sides. So square root here to cancel. So x is equal positive or negative? Negative square root of 5 over 4. Now split the square root. Let me write it here. Okay, x equal positive negative negative square root 5 over 4. Now split the square root for the numerator and denominator, so it will be x equal positive negative square root of 5 over sorry. Now, if you before you split the negative, before you split, now I told you here, if you have a negative, you take it as what? As I. So if you have a negative, you take it out and you write I. So now here I have a negative, so I take it out and write I. So it will be I square root of 5 square and split the square root. So it will be like this. What is square root of 4? It's 2. So it will be positive negative I square root of 5 over 2. Okay? That's the final answer. Now here, there are also more questions. You can try to solve them. If you need, I can solve the first one. You can take the square root for both sides. So now this cancel out. So x is equal. So you take the negative outside as I. So it will be I positive or negative. But the square root of 81, it's equal 9. So x equal I 9. X equal negative I 9. So this is the first, the two answers. Okay, I hope you understand the lesson. I know it's a little bit confusing, but you can understand it. Like this example here. If you look at this example, you have here determine the length of the side if each using the given information. The area of the larger square is 51, more than, we know that, so this area, the total area is 51. So we know that area W square, so area is 51 and W is given 2x, so it will be 2x squared. So solve that square, so it will be 51 equal 4x squared. So now you can divide by 4 for both sides. So now x squared is equal 51 over 4. But here, that's the general, but more than the area of the smaller. But because it's more than the area of the smaller, you have to do x squared plus 51, and here 2x squared as I did. Then you have to simplify to get positive or negative square root of 70. So the x here is equal 4.1 and x here is equal 8.2. I hope you understand this one. And also here there's some examples. You can refer to this example, and if you have any questions, you can contact me. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.